My coping method is driving.
My coping method is creativity in nature.
My coping method is to throw things at the wall and see what sticks.
My coping method is expressing myself through music, writing, and anything else.
My coping method is making music.
My coping method is using music to heal my emotions.
My coping method is running.
My name is Morgan Thomas. I am from Clearwater, BC, but I currently reside in Kelowna, and I am a photographer for the most part. I think since using driving as a coping method, my perspective has changed quite a bit, and definitely for the better. I definitely feel a lot more free. My brain kind of cooperates with me a little bit more. I'm able to just kind of concentrate on things better and have a better outlook on life. So some of my mental health struggles just kind of stem from certain disorders I have. So I have ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was 17. At the time it was called combined. So I had both inattentive and hyperactivity. Now I mostly stream more towards the inattentive. Have a conversation with me half the time, I'm really not listening. Other than that, it kind of got a lot worse the older I got. It stemmed more into bipolar disorder. I was getting really high highs and really low lows that I didn't know what to do with. During my lows, and actually even some of my highs, I was having really bad suicidal idealization. And I didn't know how I was going to get out of that. So I spent a lot of time, especially over the last year, just trying to kind of better myself and have a better outlook on life while still dealing with this thing that I'm going to struggle with the rest of my life. Yeah, so when I started using driving as a coping method, I really started using it when I was in school. It was a way for me to learn a new city. I jumped right into a delivery driving job, so I was constantly up and down West Kelowna, and I had no idea where I was half the time, but it really helped me learn the city. So I think I started using that as a coping method around that same time because I was spending so much time doing it that it just became something that I could do to let loose, just relax. I was suddenly able to think a lot better. And then as far as like inspirations, I guess, go for that, it wasn't really an inspiration, but I had a good friend during that time and we would constantly go on drives. And that was just how we kind of hashed out how we were going to do things, you know. We were in film school together, so we would use that time to think about our next script, how we're going to find a location, what certain shots are going to look like. And we just did a lot of driving together, and I think that's, you know, now it's a way for me to remember him kind of thing. But yeah, it's just kind of something that I do to just help myself relax, help me free my brain. Yeah, it feels there's like a need to do it at this point. My coping method became a coping method when I started feeling really trapped all the time. It was during the time when I still wasn't diagnosed with bipolar, but I was definitely starting to show the original symptoms that, looking back on now, were big warning flags. And it started becoming the coping method because it was a way for me to actually release those big feelings that I was having and wasn't sure what to do with. And yeah, it kind of bloomed from there. Now every time I kind of feel like I need to do something, it's usually because I feel like I need to drive. It's almost like that feeling like you need to run, like you need to do something, like your body doesn't want to sit still kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of people, you know, they would do something like they would run. For me, it's driving. So when I was originally diagnosed, I don't really know what it's called, but I have that thing where in my brain, I feel like everyone else thinks that I'm making it up kind of thing. it doesn't feel real almost. So before I was diagnosed, I knew there was something wrong. I couldn't figure out what it was, and I spent a lot of time just kind of like online, doing a lot of those like online tests and that kind of thing. And a lot of them would consistently tell me that, you know, I was scoring 80% on that chance that it might be bipolar kind of thing. And it took quite a while before I even was willing to go to a doctor and talk about it kind of thing. So once I finally did, it wasn't really a breath of fresh air. It was like, it was almost an instant relief that I'm not crazy, that there is actually a reason why I'm feeling like this, and that somebody out there does believe me. It's not just in my brain, it's something that's actually causing issues. Before I was diagnosed, I spent an awful lot more time driving than I do now. It was how I dealt with the death of one of my best friends. It was just something that was always there for me to be able to do, something that I could always reach out, and it was like I said, it was right there. I could go anywhere. You know, I was talking to a friend today, and I made the joke that we found a road in Kelowna I had never been down, because that was just what I would do. I would drive anywhere, just trying to clear my brain and just, you know, kind of cope with what was going on in my life. 5 years ago was really, it was about the start of when I was really struggling. I'd been struggling before that, but it was like the major, this is a problem kind of time. I was having a lot of manic episodes and didn't know what they were. I had never experienced mania before. No one I had known had ever experienced it before either. And I couldn't figure out why I felt so on top of the world. But at the same time, there was always those really dark thoughts that were just kind of right in the back of my mind. So, you know, the story I always tell when I'm talking about the first time I remember experiencing mania was I hadn't slept in 24 hours. I drove the 4 hours home to my parents' house, and I painted my mom's ceiling when she went to work. She was not impressed. She came home and had to repaint her ceiling because I did a really bad job at it. And after that, I crashed. There was nothing that could make me feel happy. I spent the rest of that week just like I could barely get out of bed because something had flipped in my brain and I didn't really know what to do with it. After that, it kind of became a thing, like I had to get home. So the way I did that is I had to drive. And in that time, I was able to reflect on what I was doing during that drive. So I was able to, you know, sit there and just kind of think. I was able to pull over to the side of the road and just relax for a couple of minutes. I was able to find some really beautiful areas that just kind of made everything a little bit, you know, more calm kind of thing. And I just was able to sit and think there. But I don't think I ever would have gotten to where I am now without having that as a coping method. I think I use that as a way to get myself from point A to point B. Is if I can't come to a decision on a drive, then it's probably not a good decision kind of thing. I use it as a way to, you know, be a deciding factor. If I can't figure out what I want in half an hour on a drive, then what I'm doing is probably not what I want. So yeah, I think it's definitely changed and has brought me to where I am. In the last couple of years, I've actually noticed a major change. You know, 5-6 years ago, I was getting out of high school, and while I was there, a lot of people, they didn't understand what mental health was. And I think that's kind of what stems from the whole feeling like I'm kind of faking it sort of thing, is everybody there was using it as an attention thing. And then getting out, and it's become more, especially since COVID, it's become such a thing that people are realizing are actually affecting their lives. You know, I was talking to a coworker the other day, and our boss is very neurotypical, and it was very weird to us that there are people out there who are still neurotypical, and like, you don't think about it, but there are people out there who don't go through those same struggles. And I think the people who do go through the struggles, they're starting to talk out more. You know, 5 years ago, I couldn't have had this conversation because people wouldn't have believed me, for one, And for two, they wouldn't have cared. They wouldn't have cared that, I spent from the time that I was 15 to 20 idolizing suicide and not wanting to be here. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older and people started talking about it that I realized I wasn't the only one experiencing this. And I could actually be okay if I could just talk about it. So that's definitely changed a lot. And I think it's changed with the older generation now as well, because we're making it change. I couldn't have gone up to my grandparents, however many years ago and said, hey, by the way, I'm bipolar. Now I can have that conversation with them and I can learn where mine stems from, because it's a genetic disability or disorder, I guess. And I didn't get it just from me. It's come passed down the line, and I didn't know that until I was willing to talk about it. And then, I learned that my parents both struggle, and I learned that all my grandparents struggled, and that there is a reason why, my brain works the way it works. The stigmas against ADHD and bipolar are very different. I noticed that there is definitely still, I don't know if it's a stigma, but there is a lot around ADHD where everyone assumes that they have it. They assume that because they have an hour where they just feel jittery or whatever, that they have ADHD. Well, at the end of that hour, you go back to a normal life. I don't. That is my entire life. You have a trouble focusing in a class that you don't particularly care about. Well, that's my entire life about everything, even the things I do care about. So I think there is definitely a huge stigma around what it is. And that's kind of the same with bipolar as well. I've only ever met maybe 2 other people in my life who actually have bipolar. I've met a lot of people who will tell me they have it though, but don't actually. They don't actually understand what it is. And yeah, it's not the, I'm feeling low and then I'm feeling happy. It's not a mood swing. It's extreme mood swings constantly. And a lot of people don't understand that. So I think it is changing, but it's definitely taking its time kind of thing. And yeah, I think there's definitely things that people are they're still stigmatizing about it. I talk about the great things that happened when I found my coping method and using driving as a great thing. And it definitely is a positive thing in my life, but it's also a really not positive. I've kind of been labeled flight risk because of it. If I feel a switch coming, I am a lot more likely to run. I have had to make deals where I keep my location on with certain people because I've worried them to the point where if they can't find me, they don't know where I am. The worst case scenario is going to come up, and I can't even blame them. I've put them in that position. So it's definitely a really good thing, but it definitely has its downfalls. And sometimes I don't even know where I'm going or why I'm doing it, but yeah. So people tend to be a little flighty around that one. It's definitely helped with making sure that I'm in a good mental state though. And I make those deals so that people know that I'm safe. They know that I'm still moving. And if something were to happen, they would be able to find me. They'd be able to find my last location. I do a lot of things when I'm driving to make sure that people know I'm safe. I keep my Google Maps on at all times. I always have a map going, even if I really don't need a map, because it'll ping to my last known location that way a lot quicker than it will if it's just kind of on. So yeah, I think it's definitely positive, but it definitely has its downsides. Mental health is a big thing. I think to me it means knowing that even though you're not okay, you're gonna be okay in a day or two. And even if it's not a day or two, you're gonna be okay eventually. And everything's changing all the time. Sometimes it's not for the better. A lot of the times, honestly, more often than not, it's for the worse. But there is always something good. And I think for me, mental health is just trying to find those good things and trying to talk to people about them and having an understanding with people. It's having a support system that, you can go to anytime and they're gonna be there for you. I think it's just learning what works for you, and if it doesn't work for you, then finding something else. I think the biggest thing for me that helped was going online and finding those online tests and everything, and the actual like supportive ones through, I don't remember any of the websites right now, but going through quizzes on there and just seeing if there is something that's helpful, and then talking to your doctor. And another big thing is, it's really hard and it feels really stupid at first, but finding a counselor. Mine I will forever be grateful for. She set me up within the first day of meeting me a complete emergency plan, so I know what I'm going to do if I'm feeling so down again that I try to do something. You know, if I'm in the midst of trying to hurt myself, I know what to do when I know that that's not what I want. So, you know, talking to those people, and then just finding a support system, you know, your best friend, your parents, you know, anybody. If you can't talk to those people, I know a lot of people find strangers on the internet, and you know, you can find people who want to support you, want to make sure that you're healthy, that you're happy, and that you're going to keep living to tomorrow.